Here's the question. This is from a 16-year-old young man. And he says, I think my friend is being sexually abused by his dad. So right off the bat, we're talking within the family.
Yeah.
That's another layer of complication.
Yeah.
He says, my friend, and I'll call him Jay, has said some things that make me believe he's being sexually abused by his dad. When I confronted him about it, he said he'd kill himself if I called the cops. I'm not sure if he was being serious because he does make jokes sometimes, but I don't want to risk it. What should I do? Jay is currently living in our school dorms, meaning he's away from his father for the time being. Until Thanksgiving break, that is. The situation gets more complicated because Jay believes his dad loves him the most. I really don't know what to do. I just want my friend to be safe.
Man.
It doesn't get much heavier than that.
No.
And to be in that position at this age, I'm guessing this is a boarding school.
Right.
16 is too young to be living in the dorms at college, I believe, for most people. Right?
Yeah.
Where would you start with that?
First, I'd start by saying, first and foremost, we are sharing our perspectives and opinions, and this is not counseling advice or anything like that. My first thought is you need to speak with someone that is qualified to counsel you in this situation. I would recommend that to this person that is concerned about their friend, because this is such a messy, tangled situation. I think it's evident by your friend's response that you shouldn't do anything rash. And so my first thought is speak to somebody that's qualified to prepare you or to equip you to address this appropriately and hopefully drive towards a positive income versus going roughshod, calling the cops, and all that would ensue. Not that that isn't what an expert in this situation would advise, but that's my initial thoughts. I don't know, man. This is heavy. What are the first things that come to your mind?
My first thought was, man, you got to tell somebody. But upon further reflection and thinking deeper about the situation, putting myself both in the shoes of the individual who's concerned and in the shoes of the friend who he believes is experiencing the abuse, I'm conflicted. Earlier, I alluded to the shame that comes with this. And so putting myself in this situation, I wrote the book, and there's a chapter in the book basically chronicling from kindergarten through high school my pursuit of sex. Once I learned that girls and boys had different private parts, and my immediate quest to figure out, well, what are these differences I must see, right? Yeah. I do mention in that chapter, in second grade, there was a girl in my class. She happened to live in the apartment above me. We were living overseas on base housing, and so we had these apartment complexes, and her family lived right above mine. And in the book, I simply say, she agreed to that proposal. I'll show you mine if you show me yours.
Right.
What I didn't talk about in the book and what I glossed over for two reasons. One, it wasn't pertinent to the narrative that I was trying to tell. But B, because there was still a lot of shame around it for me. At that time, this classmate of mine had a 16-year-old sister. And her sister was, obviously at 16, she's more exploratory. She's got a boyfriend. They're doing all these things. And her little sister is learning about sex from her 16-year-old sister and trying to copy her. So in addition to the show and tell aspect, this girl wanted to do more.
What age is this again?
We're in second grade.
So that's six, seven, 8? Yeah.
And so there was more that happened. And there was touching, and there was talking about what you do. And I'm not going to go into the graphic detail of it, but it was enough that even at that age, it made me sick to my stomach.
Really?
Coming out of that experience. And it happened multiple times. It happened progressively. We were in the same class and living in the same place for second and third grade. And so it just became one of the things that we would play. Like kids play house or play doctor. And we would do that, but it was with the full sexual context.
Oh, wow.
And that's not something that I've shared with anybody ever. I shared that recently for the first time ever with my parents since the book published. I'm 41 years old. And I've held this inside and not told anybody about it since second grade, since I was 6. And this is 2 second graders having this experience together.
Yeah.
So the amount of shame that I felt to not be able to tell anybody about that till now. Imagine amplifying that to it being your father and it being same sex. There's so much more.
Yeah.
There. And so to me, the shame of it is probably what's preventing this kid's friend from really opening up. And, he's telling jokes about it, and joking is a great way to test the waters, to see how someone's going to respond and get a feel for, is this a safe person to talk to? My guidance, what I recommend to this guy is, without explicitly stating or giving your thoughts on, hey, you should do this, first and foremost, just listen. and make sure that your friend Jay knows that you are a safe person to talk to.
Yeah.
You can do that simply by saying, hey man, whatever's going on, if something is going on, I want you to know that you can talk to me about it. I will not tell anybody. I will just be here for you, and that's it. Just see what happens. It's not going to be an instant, oh, well, here's my story.
Yeah.
It's going to take some time for that to settle in and marinate with him, and he's still going to have to process through that and figure out, all right, do I feel comfortable? Because it's still a huge risk. And in addition to the shame that's around it, if you don't know how long it's been going on, I don't know if this is his biological father or a stepfather, but either way, how long has this guy been in his life and in his house? Because if this has been going on, let's say since he was 6, for example, now he's 16, you have 10 years of ongoing abuse. And in that time, in his mind, when he's around his dad or this man in his life, he's probably still mentally at a 6-year-old level. And so he might be bigger, stronger than this guy now. And you're looking at it like, why don't you just beat the shit out of him? Why do you let him do this to you? And that's a rational thought for anyone who hasn't gone through it. But if you're in that place where you feel so small and powerless in this person's presence, and at the same time afraid to do anything that's going to put them in jeopardy and destroy your family, potentially destroy the relationship between him and your mom, it feels like there's a lot on the line there. And so there's the shame and there's the fear. And those two things are enough to keep that inside, regardless of what's happening to you physically outside. That's why I think it's really just be a listener. Remind Jay that he is a strong person, that you know he's a strong person, and that you're there for him and you'll support him any way necessary. I think that's the biggest thing, man, is I would be concerned about his feeling of a lack of power in the situation as it exists. And I would also say that by doing anything outside of his approval, so going to someone, whether it's the police or a resident assistant on campus, administrator, anything like that outside of his awareness and approval ahead of time, can then take what feels like a potential. I mean, at this point, he has control of the situation by not telling you anything. If you take that decision from him, you're taking another element of power. You're making him feel even more powerless over his situation potentially. So that's the risk you run in going outside of that trust that you're forming with him and seeking additional guidance. So if you're going to do that, especially if you see physical abuse, you know, whether it's bruises or anything that indicates that something physical is going on, then absolutely it needs to be reported, but it has to come from him. And so the best thing that you can do is just encourage, support, build him up, give him confidence, get him past that point of fear to the best of your ability. But at the end of the day, it's going to be his call.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's as sound advice as anybody could give. Be a trusted advisor, be a confident, and not even an advisor, a trusted listener.
That's the most important thing, I think,
We all have that tendency to resolve. When somebody brings something to us or if we think something's wrong, we have a natural tendency to want to try and fix it. Sometimes all you have to do is be there. All you have to do is listen. You don't have to do anything, just being there, sitting in heavy situations. I've been involved in myself surrounding death and other things like that. And you're always like, oh, what do I say? What do I do? What do I do? And sometimes simply just physically being there is all anybody can expect or ask or hope for. And even though it may seem like you're missing the mark and that you're not really actually doing anything, there's power to just being there.
Yeah, way more power than you think to just being there.
And just a brief point of clarification, when I said that I would suggest that person seeks counsel, it's anonymously so that maybe they could gain the perspective of somebody that counsels people in these situations. And I suspect that they would likely say a lot of the things you just said. Again, I'm no expert, but to me, that sounds like sound advice.
I think the other way that you could go, if you ultimately feel compelled to bring this outside of Jay and go, for lack of a better term, to go around him, to help him get help, I wouldn't share any details. I would go to someone that either you know mutually, and I'm talking about an adult here. I wouldn't bring in anyone else your age, anyone that potentially has the capacity to sabotage him via social capital and use this against him in a way to bring him down. I would go to a trusted adult, whether that's an administrator at the school, someone in healthcare, and say, you know what? I don't think Jay is doing too well. Would you just keep an eye on him and see if you see anything? Just keep it very vague. And all you're doing is bringing their attention to the fact that you think something is wrong. Let them evaluate themselves And if they feel a need to come in and step in and ask him those same types of questions that I mentioned before, just be a listening ear. If you don't feel confident or you don't feel like your influence has established the result that you're looking for, that you hope for Jay, that would be a way to do it. But don't share details. Don't even share your suspicions of what the cause is. Just make it known that I don't think he's doing too well, and I'd appreciate it if you just keep an eye on him.
Yeah, that sounds like really sound wisdom as well.
Again, this is not prescriptive advice by any stretch, but just coming from someone who has been through something like this, it's a very, very tough situation. And I don't envy anyone going through it. I know there's a lot of people who have gone through it, are going through it again. And there's so much shame tied to it because it's not your fault. I know now it wasn't my fault. I feel like for a long time I felt it was because it was my interest in showing what's under your skirt.
Yeah.
That was my interest.
Yeah.
But that's where my interest stopped. In second grade, I'm not looking to be a sexually active person.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that means. I don't know what that entails. And so all the details I'm getting after that is just like, this is fucking weird. I don't know what to do, but I also can't run away. I also can't tell my mom because I'll be in trouble. And all of a sudden it spirals out of control, and you're just, the only thing you have left is to hold it inside. And it sits and it affects your relationships down the road. In the book, I talk about my first kiss being in 7th grade. And that's because that's when I said to myself, I'm choosing this.
Yeah.
This is not something that was forced on me. And so this is where I start my line. But all of that baggage was still with me. And it wasn't until I wrote the book and then subsequently told my mom and my dad about it when they were asking me questions about that time in my life that it really came through. And I realized, like, I didn't even think of it as an abusive or a sexually abusive situation until I put that in perspective talking to them. And I realized, holy shit, I've been carrying this for this long with this much shame and this sick feeling in my gut with it. Anyone who's out there who's listening to this, who is going through something like this, it's not your fault. Even if this is something that you feel like you led someone on or you gave them some type of hint, they're going to make you feel like it was your fault, that it's your idea. It's not. And there's no shame in going and getting help for this. I think it's getting easier to report this kind of thing, certainly than it has been in the past. It is, by no means am I saying it's easy. It's a very, very hard and very, very emotional road to walk. But if you are feeling like this is something that you want to get out of, you absolutely should find someone to talk to. Find someone to talk to, because the longer you hold on to it, even if it's something that happened in your past and you just are holding on to it, if it's not an active situation, find someone to talk to and share it, let it out, and you will feel so much lighter. It will make your relationships going forward better. It just takes something that you've been afraid of, ashamed of, and lets it out of your system. And that's an incredibly powerful thing.
Yeah. Ooh, I don't have a lot to add to that.
I told you this one was going to be pretty heavy, man.
Yeah,
so,
man, that is heavy.
To this young man, thank you for putting this out there, because I know that you're not the only one that has this concern for a friend or for yourself, but it speaks volumes about where you are maturity-wise and just recognizing your friend's pain and having the compassion to want to do something about it. So the difference between compassion and empathy, going back to Jeff's conversation, empathy is being like, I feel you, bro. And compassion is, I feel you, bro, and I want to fix this.
Yeah.
I want to work with you to fix this and make this better. So thank you for your compassion. And I think it speaks volumes to who you are and who you're going to be as you continue to grow, mature, and move through life. So kudos to you.
Yeah, this world desperately needs me.
I don't know how we even lighten it up after that.
I don't know. I'll take a swing and a miss, and you can cut this if you want. But first, thank you for sharing that. The weight that has placed on you really surprises me. And I say that from having not experienced that, but I don't mean to diminish it by any means or anything like that. But I think back, some of my earliest memories are when I was like 6, 7, 8. I don't remember much before that. But as long as I can remember, I have been on a crusade to conquer sexually, even at that age that you're talking about. And I didn't have that situation occur, but I was always after it, wanting to see what I could see. And I'd have friends that had older sisters to chase me and try and get them to tackle me and kiss me and do all this stuff. And I don't want to understand why that had such a weight on you the way it did. And I'm glad that you got it off your chest. And I'm glad you talked to your parents. And I'm glad you shared that with me. And I'm just trying to put myself in that situation and thinking, would I have felt the same way? I don't know.
I think it's all very personal. Did you ever shoplift as a kid?
Yeah.
Yeah, so did I.
Yeah.
Right? There's a phase where you just want to take some stuff because you can. All kinds of situations where you do something and then you feel guilty about it afterward. And in a lot of cases, you can apologize or you can make up. But sex and giving yourself is one of those things that you can never take back. Once you have an experience, you can't take it back. And when it's taken from you, it can't be given back. So if I stole something from you, if I liked your headset and I wanted that and I stole that, I might feel bad about that and I would beat myself up about it. I could give it back to you. We rectify the situation. I might still be like, man, you're a piece of shit, Tom. Why would you do that?
Yeah.
But it's something that can be given back. Something that's taken from you without consent that cannot be returned, cannot be recompensated.
Yeah.
Is a different thing. And when it has to do with something as visceral as, I mean, it touches you on the level of who you are as a person. If I think of myself as, using a situation like this, if you think of yourself as a straight man and you're interested in women, and then you have a coach or a teacher, or perhaps a father figure, touch you in a way that you just know, like I'm sure someone at some point has either looked at you or touched you in a way that you're like, that doesn't feel right with me. Does that happen to you? In any context?
Yeah, maybe. I think so. Not in a sexual context, but yeah.
Any context where you're just like, you're too close. That didn't feel, it's
weird.
You get a weird feeling in your
yeah.
stomach. In this situation, that feeling that you get is amplified times a million, and you never lose it. And all you can do is tamp it down and try and keep it in a manageable level.
And I'd be really interested, and I don't know that there's any way to know this, but what her perspective is on that situation. Obviously, it sounds like there might have been some questionable things going on between her older sister and this young lady, that you shared your story about. I wonder how she views it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
She probably has some kind of trauma around it as well. I mean, as a second grader, having a 16-year-old sister, that age gap is significant. You're at completely different points in your life.
Yeah.
You're not playing Barbies with your 16-year-old sister. So if that's what you see and is modeled to you as, that's what a woman needs to be, effectively she was robbed of her childhood too.
Yeah. And I don't know any specifics, and I don't want to get into any specifics. I don't think that's appropriate. But I'm thinking to myself, and I'm trying to put myself in those shoes. If my older brother was like, check this out, this is what you do, grab yourself a lady and whatever, again, not to get too graphic, and then I had somebody that was the same age and we did that, how would I feel about that? How would I think about that? How would I look back on that? I don't know.
It's one of those things that you can't know.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the conversation we had about addiction too, right? Unless you've been on that path, it's hard to explain to somebody who hasn't been down it. Just like trying to explain to someone the shame around it. You're like, just fucking tell somebody. Just call the cops. Like, if that's happened to you, call the cops. There's so many more layers to it that make it so much more complicated.
Yeah, what's interesting, and I'm not trying to equate this in any way, but I've always had a natural tendency to you screw up, you go tell immediately. Like, you do something really dumb and really stupid, you go tell.
That's going to be something that a lot of people listening will wrestle with. But if you haven't been through it, why don't you just go tell someone, right? But again, it's just one of those things that unless you are someone who's been through it and know what that weight feels like and how impossible that lift feels, because the other side of it is, I don't know what happens on the other side. I don't know if I'm going to destroy my family. I don't know how this is going to affect people around me. I don't know how this is going to affect anyone who knows me, what they're going to say about me. There's so much more that goes into it that if you know someone in that situation or have been in that situation, just be a listener, be someone who's there and available to them, and have some compassion.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things that literally you cannot understand if you have.
And just like I can't understand your situation, and you're saying it's almost unfathomable for you to understand his situation, it's the same thing. I can't understand yours. You can't fully understand his because of the order of magnitude and difference versus a father figure, a parent, someone you're related to, someone that's older. It's not comprehensible.
Right, but imagine if you had a tremendously close relationship with your grandfather. And I have a grandfather, but we were not that close or something like that. and both of our grandfathers die. I'm not going to understand the true depth of your loss,
Yeah.
but I will understand the depth of loss and what it means to have gone through that.
Yeah.
And so that's the closest I think you can say. Myself and Jay, very, very different, but I don't think you can ever compare traumas.
Any trauma.
Any trauma.
No.
The death of your grandfather, the death of my grandfather. Even though you were much closer to yours, if that's the most traumatic thing that's happened in my life, that trauma is very real for me.
Versus, hey, I don't even have a grandfather. I don't understand what you're talking about.
Right.
Never had one, never known one. Yeah.
And so I don't need to know the details of what has happened with Jay, but all I can say is, hey, I've been on this path and I know how I felt. And so I can relate in that way. Not saying that I know what you're going through, man, but it's one of those things, silent nod and a wink, be like, bro, I'm there.
Yeah. Hang in there.
Yeah. I think that's the perfect way to wrap it. It's hang in there. And that goes for everyone who's either going through it, has been through it. Hang in there. Find someone to talk to. If you are a friend of someone who you know is going through this or has been through this, be a listener. And this is a great opportunity for you to prove your ability to be a true confidant in seeking to help someone, and not for your personal gain in terms of dirt that you can share or just to feel cool because you're in on it and you know the situation's going on, but just to truly be there as a true friend.
That's what we're trying to promote, is positive, healthy communication.
Absolutely.
You're not alone.
Absolutely. You're not alone.
Yeah, man.
All right, buddy. I appreciate you sitting here through this, hearing my story, and hopefully providing some quality of guidance, perspective to Jay's friend. And if you share this with Jay and he listens to it, Jay, I feel you, bro. We're here for you. So best of luck with all of it.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing, man.
Yeah, brother.